I'd like to start with a moment of silence for paramedic David Restuccio of Staten Island, who is, since our last meeting, we had a line of duty death. David was a retired FDNY paramedic who was working EMS in Staten Island, and he was killed in a collision with an ambulance. So, quick moment of silence. Thank you. Let's start with approval of the minutes from the prior meeting. Minutes have been distributed. Does anyone have any alterations to the minutes? Okay, motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes have been approved. We have some correspondence. We have from the New York State Department of Health, one citation of disciplinary action, which will be placed in the record and is noted on tonight's agenda for Richard J. Warner. We have a number of course sponsorship applications that are to be processed. This one here being from, all right. We have a letter from the New York State Department of Health to the Berlin Volunteer Fire Company reminding them that their emergency medical service certificate issued to their agency expired on July 31st, and they're now in violation of Article 30, and they need to get to work on straightening that out. We have a letter from the Department of Health to the Community Rescue Squad in Copiague, which is the transmission of their new ambulance operating certificate with their DBA of Community Rescue Squad. And we have a couple people who are excused tonight. Steve Rinaldi regrets he could not be here tonight. However, Steve had a death in his family over the weekend, and I know we all share Steve's grief and loss. In addition, Jim Vina and Aiden O'Connor are excused from tonight's meeting. And so that takes care of the correspondence. And you can see the course applications for information only are all listed in the agenda for tonight. So we'll start next with the CON committee. Jim, do you have a report?
Yeah, the committee is in receipt of an application for a transfer of operating certificate from Corinth Ambulance Squad to the town of Corinth. So it was just received Friday, and the committee will meet on it within the next 10 days and schedule the appropriate actions.
Thanks, Jim. So we asked Jim what it's about, and he said literally he just received it. So we'll learn more about that. Executive Director's report.
Everybody should have a copy. A few highlights. Remember the date, October 9th is our annual EMS Awards Banquet. Once again, it'll be at St. Pete's. Like to see you there. Seats are filling up. I think we have something like 50 RSVPs already. We're going to cut it off about 100 or 110 people. For those that do not know, Jay Tyler, our training coordinator, resigned about 2 months ago to accept the director's job at Gildan EMS. Gildan's gain, our loss, but over that period of time we formed a interview committee and interviewed several candidates to replace Jay. The committee unanimously decided to accept or appoint Richard Ruther to fill that spot. If you don't know Rich is a full-time Gildan paramedic. He also works, I believe, for Corinth or Jessup's Landing. Gave a great interview, as did the others. I think Rich will bring a lot to the table, and I'm looking forward to getting him into that office, hit the ground running with our upcoming training schedule. Mutual aid plan, that'll be discussed later. Protocol books, we've exhausted the fund for the protocol books. I ordered 2,150 additional books, 500 of which are going to our friends in the Susquehanna region that adopted our comprehensive protocols, so that's a good thing. And the website is under maintenance right now because we're having it totally redone. Found a new designer we were happy with. The price was very good, and hopefully in the next couple weeks you'll see a brand new Remo website up there. And that concludes my report.
Thanks, Tim. Also happening here, October 2nd, is the CLI update. I've got the agenda if anyone wants to get a look at it up here. So that's coming up in our training program here. Next up, Rich with the Treasurer's report.
before. We're still in very good shape with more than $500,000 in assets and virtually no liabilities whatsoever. There were no bills for approval when we began the meeting. There was a motion from the executive committee, which I made, to approve up to a $2,500 expenditure for a new computer for the regional medical director. That comes to you as a seconded motion for your consideration and approval, hopefully.
All right.
Any questions on that motion?
So we've got a seconded motion on the floor for a computer for the regional medical director, up to $2,500. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes carry, and the motion is approved.
I'll do the budget while we're on.
Yep, we have, the budget is further down on the agenda,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but let's do it right now, Rich, since you're up and speaking.
Sure. You should have a copy of the executive director's proposed budget for the fiscal year, which begins 10/1 and runs through 9/30 of 13. Steve Rinaldi and I got this in advance. We both had a chance to look it over, speak with him about it. I personally think Steve could not be here tonight, but I think it's very well done. It's a very conservative budget. It's well done. It's fairly flat from the prior year. Tim has advocated for a modest COLA for himself and for Dean Romano, who had no raise last year, if you recall. The rest of the staff, I believe, is new, correct, Tim?
Yeah, you have to include Administrative Chris Gould with that
Chris
raise,
as well,
too.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, Chris as well. And again, we're still showing a healthy bottom line. You know, we're in good financial shape, and I certainly support this budget and would advocate that we pass it tonight.
Yeah, I want to congratulate Tim on the development of a good budget and certainly holding the line on expenses. So let's start with, are there any questions for Rich on the budget? It's coming down as a seconded motion from the executive committee. All right, so all those in favor of the passage of the Remo budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, running through September 30th, 2013, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, any abstentions? Okay, the budget carries.
Steve, just one thing.
Yes,
If you look at the bottom, the profit loss on the budget, it reflects a $9,000 profit. That profit's actually $6,000 higher than that because we took $6,000 from there to dedicate to our capital reserve fund to offset leasehold increases once this current lease expires. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. That bottom line was actually 15 plus instead of 9. So.
Thanks. All right, GPO Finance Committee report. Over the last 2 months since we met, the GPO has had 2 of its stronger performing months in July and August. We have new business that has come in from Albany Fire, which has begun making some purchases through the GPO, with the GPO winning the bids with Albany Fire, and that puts our total sales at 9,600 in July and August. So that's a good development. The second good development from the GPO is that the 2 regions that we had talked about, we've been given the exclusive territory by the owner of the GPO. Mohawk Hospital Supply has given us the rights to Mountain Lakes and Arams, and Tim's been working with the directors of those regions to get them on board. So we'll be offering the preferred pricing that everyone that's using the GPO here gets to those 2 regions, which gives us some more people to do business with. We still need to ramp the numbers up. When the way the GPO works is once we meet a certain threshold in business, our percentage that we receive goes up. So right now we receive 1%. When we hit $20,000 a month, we start receiving an effective amount of about 2%. That's when it becomes real money for us. So our goal is to hit that target. So anyone here that wants to learn a little bit more about buying from the GPO, there's some things that I buy from them in my agency that you just can't touch their price. There are other things they're not that good on, but some of the things, because they're a hospital supply company, you know, when they go out and buy 4x4s and 5x9s, they buy them by the tractor trailer run. You know, no one's going to get a better price on that. But there are other things, so, you know, we buy things from them selectively. So if you want to look at it, see me, see Tim, we'll hook you up with the sales guy. All right, that's the advertisement. Medical director's report.
I'll try to be brief, which is never anything I'm good at. The first is, as you know, we have taken a lead statewide in running a pilot project for the Department of Health. Tim and Chris Gould have been doing a spectacular job at doing the basic supervision and the administrative oversight for this on a statewide basis. This is the basic life support and naloxone program. Local law enforcement agency at Rensselaer County Sheriff's Department is the first law enforcement agency in the state to be equipped with this. Local BLS squad out in Hoag's Corners stars in the video and was the first squad trained in the use of this. Fortunately, the heroin that people are buying up in northern New York is lousy, and we haven't needed to use this at all yet. On the other hand, we are the stars of Suffolk County, where at this point we have at least 23 saves as a result of BLS naloxone, about half of which are being done by several precincts, including Marine Patrol, the Suffolk County Police Department, as well as some of their BLS agencies out there. The other, we're probably around 30 at this point. The other saves are all out in Monroe, Livingston, and Rochester, City of Rochester Fire Department, where they do BLS first response and have been coming upon a whole lot of opioid overdoses there that they've been reversing. I've been reviewing the sheets as they've been coming through. Nice thing to recognize is statewide, not everybody fills out study instruments the way they're supposed to. However, these are very clearly appropriate indications for the medication that's being done appropriately. And most important, as far as I'm concerned, is there have been no cases at which our providers are at risk having reversed somebody from an opioid overdose. So that's the one thing that we're watching more than anything else. Some people have gotten angry, but nobody has become violent to the extent that one of our providers would be at risk. So far this program is a resounding success. So thank you, Tim and Chris Gould, for all your support.
Thank you, Doctor.
Team effort, so thank you. From the Medical Advisory Committee, the main discussion involved drug shortages. And what we came to very quickly was that drug shortages are terrible. They will continue. There's no way for us to predict what comes next. And all information that we have should at all times be circulated through Tim. So it can come back to me. I can look through some of the different hospital sources and we can find out what the outlook looks like. We've also had some compounding pharmacies that have come forward to be useful for restocking medications, particularly things like etomidate. There aren't any clear answers in terms of where we're going to go long term with this, except just to continue to ride this supply and demand disaster, basically. And hopefully it won't lead to any adverse patient outcomes. So those are the two big things. The other just advisory for everybody is our collaborative protocols. I was lucky to find out today. I've been in discussion with folks in the Hudson Valley as well as in Westchester. And I'm proud to say that our collaborative protocols look like they may be going all the way down from the New York City line. If so, it'd be pretty cool for these to be the right side of the state protocols, because they will now go from the border of a city of greater than 1 million all the way up to a country where they speak French. So this is pretty impressive that we've put together a product that collaboratively is endorsed by this large group of regions. So good news for everybody. And Tim is doing a great job getting that out to the folks as it goes. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And we expect you'll have them translated into French shortly so that we can continue our northward expansion.
I don't know how you say French, fictional in French.
Do you have any additional medical advisory committee report or academic committee report, or were they included?
The academic committee report I don't feel adequately prepped on. If anybody has any more information about the additional 14 hours of training and wants to share that, that would be great. There is a webcast that Albany Med will be hosting with Andy Johnson, the Director of Education for the Bureau. That's actually on Wednesday night of this week. That for everybody who's interested in the content and expectation of the 14 hours of additional training required by all of our EMTs, that may be a very good webcast for you to watch.
All right, thanks, Mike. New York State EMS Council, Rich.
State Council meets next week, so no report at this time. An item I do want to bring up is there's an 8-year maximum length of service for any State Council appointee, and I've reached the end of my limit at the end of this year. So it will be the Remsco's responsibility to recommend the Commissioner my replacement. My understanding from the Bureau is that in the past, they had always allowed the Remsco to pick the replacement essentially, and the Commissioner and then the Bureau would rubber stamp it. They are now requiring you submit at least 2 nominees, and they will consider and choose the better in their wisdom and judgment.
The State Council is specifically considering the need for diversity in the selection. So we are seeking people who would wish to nominate themselves or suggest others for the seat on the State EMS Council. And if you are interested, you should please contact Tim with your interest, and we'll begin working on it. Rich has been an incredibly good person for us to have on there all these years. And the good news is that until his replacement is confirmed by the governor's office, he stays. So we won't have any. And the governor's office takes a while to get these things done. So Rich may be giving this report for some time to come. And of course, Rich is the chair of the council as we speak as well. But there is, if you remember from last year, there were some changes proposed to Article 30 that would rewrite how the state council works and rewrite how the regions are organized, and those did not make it through. My guess is that the governor wasn't done when it didn't happen last year, and it's going to be considered again, whether in the same format or there'll be some changes. And so having strong representation from our region there is really important. That doesn't just mean going to the meetings. The real work that happens for the State EMS Council happens with folks that participate in committees and task forces that meet between the meetings, really make the policy, and they bring that policy back to the council, and the council generally debates it and approves it. But the chance to have an impact is through that hard work. So Rich has really been a leader of that for 8 years, and we're going to be looking for somebody who can similarly lead it going forward. So please see Tim if you're interested. Nurses Committee, Emery?
Yep, we met on Thursday, and PCRs, top of the list. And it was reported that St. Peter's stated they were one step closer to getting their PCIs auto-faxed. So apparently it's at the face sheets. Or the face sheets, I'm sorry, the face sheets, I meant to say. One step closer, they said that they are, they've brought it to the IT, it's at the IT level. They've gotten part of it, figured out, and then the other part, they still need to get the IT report to export. So, administration said was aware, and she's confident that it will happen soon.
That's a positive bill.
Sure.
Thank you.
Closest. So. Outdated drugs, it was reported that there's been an increased number of outdated drugs being left at the hospitals, so we ask that EMS providers should be disposing of their own instead of dropping them at the hospitals and leaving them for us to do. One-to-one exchange, we talked about, again, some of the hospitals in the region are exchanging spring-loaded needles as a restock item instead of the needles that most of the other ones are using. So apparently EMS is not being trained, not all of them anyway, on the spring-loaded needles, and therefore they're taking more from the hospitals who don't use those, which is Alice, St. Peter's, and Saratoga. So that is an issue, and I'm not sure really what the answer is unless training could happen, or not really sure. But all of the hospitals have noticed that that's been increased.
Not sure training's going to help. They just don't want them.
Yeah, I don't think it's training.
Yes, exactly. It isn't training, it's a bit.
Sorry, you don't like them.
Press the button.
I don't like them. But it's what we got.
So it's Alice.
All right. Anything else, Emery?
Yep, D10, we talked about that in addition to EMS using that, some of the ED providers are using the D10 instead of D50 and feel that there's better patient outcome with the use of that. We had a big discussion about the ED holds, the number of hold patients that are in all of our emergency departments, which really causes a backlog on the EMS side. Couple of reasons. One of them is that there's been an increased number of nursing home patients waiting to be placed, and because of the Medicaid issue, the Medicare-Medicaid issue, they're being kept in the hospital a lot longer, and it's not getting approved at the county level. So therefore, most of us have, at Saratoga, I can speak that we usually have 8 to 10 patients waiting at any time, and we've had like 36 to 40 nursing home patients just waiting to be placed, which really causes a backlog in the EDs. Apparently, St. Peter's and Albany Med are the worst, I believe, because of the number that they've had. 2 weeks ago, Albany Med had 30 holds in their ED over the weekend and were on diversion. And St. Peter's this past weekend had like 20 plus, which causes quite an issue on the EMS side, because then they can't hand over the patients, and then the hand-up communication is getting delayed. So we're not quite sure what the answer is. I know at Albany they said they're like double bunking and trying to put patients in hallways, and there's just not enough of nurses to take report as well as distribute patients.
No, it's sad news. There isn't a real light at the end of the tunnel. You know, the getting patients out of upstairs. We can't get them upstairs until we get patients out of upstairs. We can't get them out of upstairs until all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed in terms of the paperwork given out to nursing and long-term care facilities, and that's just not something that I see that's going to change anytime soon.
Just to follow up on that, I had a conversation with Dr. Frisch at Albany Med about this a couple of weeks ago, and I approached it from the standpoint of an EMS provider saying, you know, we're spending a lot of time waiting, and our providers are frustrated, and their managers are frustrated, and for some of us time is money, or for some of us time is time. If we can't turn around and get the crews back in service, there's not a crew on the street. And he was very appreciative of my bringing it to him, and he said, very similar to what Mike said, if we can't move patients out of those beds that are filled, we can't move patients upstairs. He said that Albany Medical Center is taking this very seriously. They're opening some new beds on where they can find beds. They're building new beds. You know, you see the tower going up. But the challenge that we tend to have is that a lot of our hospitals, the beds are filled. You know, the hospital's got a 2-patient room. You can't bunk a male with a female. A hospital may have open neonatal beds, but that doesn't matter if you need a bed for you know, adult with CHF. So there's challenges in management, and I think the important thing for us to remember is that the communication is happening between the region, between the medical directors, between the nurses, about trying to make this go away. So as Mike says, it's not going to necessarily change soon. I mean, Albany Medical Center is working on it. The other hospitals are working on it. I mean, I know Anne Marie, I'm sure every day at Saratoga is trying to figure out how, because this is really not a great situation for the ED staff either. They're not real happy holding patients because they're now not able to move patients in that need care, and they're basically just holding patients. The important advice for our EMS providers is that we need to be patient, and we need not to shoot the messenger. There have been, you know, the ED staff is just as stressed as we are. And so I know that, you know, our providers want to get back out on the street. They want to get their patients turned over. The ED staff is working at their capacity to try and deal with it. So, you know, look, I've stood for 45 minutes, you know, waiting to turn a patient over. And I've had patients start to deteriorate where we had to actually go and tap someone on the shoulder and say, you know, please now. And I think the ED staff is very responsive in those situations. So I think the counsel to our employees, our members, has just got to be, you know, when you have situations, document them, report them up the chain. You know, I think that, you know, when Tim learns about them or when Mike learns about them, you know, we can highlight them for the people in a position to try and influence change. But the important thing is we all got to keep our cool when we are turning over patients in the ED.
At Saratoga, we had 2 floors of nursing home patients, and we've actually converted one into med-surg. So that's, you know, 20 plus beds, and then we added another 6 beds for the ER for admitted patients as well. So we are all trying to.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Anything else?
Nope, our next meeting will be in November.
Awesome. You have some, Jim? Or?
Yeah, just as a tag to that, and maybe for Dr. Daly, is there anything system-wide that can be addressed in terms of making the approval process function faster, or should we as a region maybe be trying to spearhead something with vital signs or state EMS council or something to try and put pressure on people? Because you know, while this may be worse for us now, it certainly is not new in the state of New York, and there are areas that would be snickering at us if we told them we had a 45-minute wait because they'd be going, well, gee, ours are usually 90. So,
I think this is something that, if it's going to potentially be addressed or has the potential to have a solution, this is something that Mr. Kroll will be investigating during doing his day job, and is completely outside our realm.
Okay.
I think we just have to ride it out, be as polite as we can, and hopefully the hospitals will learn how to work with their own shortcomings, so we can continue to operate as efficiently as possible.
Thanks, Mike, for sort of a 2-minute framing of it. New York State's attempting to make some major changes in how we treat patients. We're trying to get people into primary care and out of hospital care. We're trying to, when I say we, it's a collective mission that's being forced on healthcare providers by the state to say, we want to keep people out of emergency rooms by keeping them in primary care, by keeping them healthy. We want to make care patient-centered, so the emergency room shouldn't be the focus, but the primary care physician's office should be the focus. The challenge is at the same time, now one of the reasons this is being done is to save money. The most expensive place to treat patients is in the hospital. But at the same time, New York State is trying to reduce the number of hospital beds. So not as much here, but in other parts of the state, there has been rapid consolidation and shutting down of hospital beds happening. Frankly, it is going to happen here at some point in time. I mean, I think we all know it's pretty public that out of the merger of that formed Northeast Health, that one of the hospitals will cease to be an acute care hospital at some point in time. I don't know if that's happened or not, but it's been announced. So the government is trying to push the system in a certain direction, and there are going to be growing pains in that push. It's wrapped up in the federal healthcare reforms, it's wrapped up in the state healthcare reforms. If everything goes 100% how all the reformers want it to go, they're going to eliminate the need for lots of hospital care. There'll be less hospitals, there'll be a lot more primary care physicians. But, I don't think that we have a reasonable chance of 100% success. I mean, there's going to be a lot of bumps along the road, and unfortunately the bumps fall into places like emergency rooms. There's talk about, can we have freestanding emergency rooms in New York State so that people can go to a place like what Saratoga and Albany Med have set up, and that could be a real emergency room. And so people that have, the walking wounded don't have to go to the hospital, but can go to a freestanding emergency room. Those kinds of things are all being talked about, but it's going to be a long road for us. All right, next up is the MCI committee, and I think, Jim, you're going to give the report tonight, right?
I suppose. There's a off-site drill scheduled for the Albany County Airport on October 27th. It's a Saturday morning. It was originally supposed to be September, but got pushed back a month, which is good for us because it's very important that we spread the word to all agencies in the 6-county area that this is going to occur on that day. Colony EMS is the lead agency for EMS, and they're actually running the drill. REMO's involvement is to test our MCI mutual aid plan. Two things we're going to test really is the communications tree amongst the 6-county PSAPs, and then to actually take a point in real time to see how many ambulances are actually available at that point in time. Just for example, if they have a crew, or if they're out of service because of a call, or out of service mechanical. So as we've been meeting on this the past couple of days, it became apparent that some, depending on how your agency works, some agencies may actually have to get toned out during your normal process on the radio. It's just important to tell you folks that it's a drill, do not respond. We don't expect anybody to be involved and go to the scene or anything like that. So we're just going to test it to see if our plan is going to work. And I don't believe it's ever been attempted before in the remote regions.
Any questions for Jim on the drill? All right. Next up is membership committee, and we Phyllis is not here tonight, but when I was here, we've got three letters to act on. First, from Jim Stairs, I respectfully request reappointment to the Regional EMS Council as a representative of the community at large. Second, from Jeff Williams, I'd like to request consideration for an at-large seat on the Regional Council. I've been an active member of the council for many years and participate on the academic committees and the MAC. And then from Greene County EMS, please consider this letter of request to reappoint Phil Myers to the Regional EMS Council for the term of September 2012 through 16, representing Greene County. And also, please be advised, Aidan O'Connor will be the representative and Phyllis Dimkovic will be the alternative for Greene County for 2011 through 2014. And that's signed Phyllis Dimkovic, who is our membership chair as well. So we have 3 items to bring before the council for action tonight. These folks that are asking for reappointment, we checked, they're all members in good standing. They're all active in participation. And so it's up to the Regional EMS Council to make them, if there's a motion to act on these 3 appointments. Okay, got a motion, got a second? Okay, we've got a second. Do we have any discussion? All right, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so we've made these appointments to the Regional EMS Council. Thank you to those who continue to be willing to serve. Next up, nominating committee. I don't think we have anything, but I think, Jim, the nominating committee gets to work pretty soon on the 2013 slate, right?
Right, start thinking about your opportunities for the first of the year.
We'll start writing those letters.
Sounds like a sales pitch.
Okay. All right, thanks. Next up is the QI committee. Over the summer, Steve Rinaldi and Dr. Daly and Tim were working on some changes to revamp the QI committee. I think there's a feeling that having a physician be a chair of the QI committee would help us to build participation and begin developing a new agenda for quality assurance. And being that quality assurance is really something that we need to have as a real marker of us for success, given the changes that are happening in the healthcare system, Dr. Rob McHugh of Ellis Medicine came forward and volunteered to spearhead that effort, and Steve appointed Rob to be the chair of the QI committee. I want to thank Jim for many years of service as QI chair out of Schenectady, and hope he still participates. Rob's not here tonight, but the QI committee has held 2 meetings since his appointment, identified a number of priority areas to start researching. And I don't know, Dr. Daly, if you'd like to give a report since you were in attendance at the last meeting, real brief. Or?
I think it's just Rob is really invigorated and thinks that this is going to be an awesome opportunity. I'm looking forward to having him in that position. We're going to work to see how we can get as much clear data as we can out of EMS charts, because there's a large preponderance of our agencies that are using that. We've discussed that will leave, unfortunately, significant portions of our region underserved. Hopefully the state bridge will come to work at some point, so we'll be able to integrate that data. What we will do is build projects so we can hand them off to folks that are using either ESO or Zoll product, or working on paper for that matter, and have them generate similar data so we can come up with truly representative data for patient care in our region. There's a lot of potential opportunities here. Some will just involve ways of taking care of patients. Some will involve how well we take care of patients. Some will involve how we can improve care. But I think it's going to be an exciting opportunity. So hopefully every squad will see a way to participate in this and make this a very lively and forward-thinking committee.
Thanks, Mike. Tim, do you think it would be possible to send a note out to the agencies a week before the QI committee meeting for the next couple of months, just saying, hey, QI committee's meeting, I know that it's not a normal, it's during the week and during the day, but if we start getting the note out, maybe we can get people to get some attendance built to help Rob get going on this. Thanks. Okay. Yes, Rich.
Question for Tim, actually. What time, I know it meets on the REMAC academic day. What time does it start?
Typically 11 a.m.
11 a.m.?
Yep.
Okay. Awards committee, and Lynn stepped out for a minute, so the banquet, as Tim had his report, is going to be at St. Peter's on the 9th of October. All the agencies that were selected have been notified, and the awards dinner will, the plaques are purchased, the menu's picked. Tim said it's going to be a good time. I think our guest is Lee Burns, right?
Yes.
Lee Burns, the
Guest speaker.
guest speaker from the Bureau of EMS, will be joining us, and so She's from our region, and so that'll be a lot of fun. So please make your reservations with Tim. Okay, county reports, Albany.
The Albany County Sheriff's Office of Emergency Management is moving from the Cohoes location and moving to an old elementary school located in Clarksville, New York.
How many people here know where Clarksville is?
Big
No kidding, wow. I know you guys do, but well, Clarksville is a stone's throw from Delmar. If anyone- Delmar, next town out.
Due west.
It's a big stone. It's a big stone. Yeah, but it's just straight out a little bit. Okay, Columbia County.
We have an EMT course that starts this week. Also, we've allocated 5 slots for vital signs to reimburse those 5 to make application.
Green County.
We've had, on the 11th, we had a dedication of 3 monuments, one for each of the emergency services. We had about 250 people there for it, which is a very big turnout. We also had the site, the flagpole, but also a piece of steel from the World Trade Center disaster. So that will become an annual event. Fortunately, we do not have any names on the EMS stone, but we do have names on the fire and police stone.
Well, congratulations on that, on getting that
And
finished.
we have started an original and a research EMTD course, and we will have also stipends for people going to vital signs. I don't want to put it in a dig here, we'll have a lot more than 5.
All right, Rensselaer County.
Okay, we've got 2 EMT originals and research that have started, another one coming up mid-October. CFR original at Regeneron started in August, 2 more CFR originals right after the first of the year. We're having fun.
And we wish you the best in getting rid of those crutches fast.
Thank you. And we do have a new EMS1 coordinator, James Dorwood, who I'm sure is sorry he missed being here tonight, but we'll make sure he knows enough to come play with us next month.
Thanks, Len. Saratoga?
Business as usual, nothing new to report.
All right, Schenectady?
No report.
No report, okay. All right, under new business tonight, we have a couple of things. First, a note on there that we have got several people whose terms expire. So this is your chance to send a letter and seek reappointment. So if your name's on the list, please send a letter if you wish to be reappointed to Tim, so they can be acted on in the future. Second item under new business has already been done, is the operating budget for 2012-13. And so we do have one other item of new business that's not on the agenda, and tonight we're going to bring it up for advisory only, and it was discussed at the executive committee. Dr. Daly has suggested that we take a small amount of funds in the retained earnings of the region and place them into a designated medical research fund. The idea being that persons or entities within our region that are interested in working on a medical research project can send a grant application to REMO to apply for a few $1,000s, and I'll ask Mike to describe that in a minute. He shared with us some examples of where a small research project led to a protocol change that became, and then a statewide change in EMS policy. And so Mike thought that if we were able to set aside a fund, and then the interest off that fund earned each year through its investments could then be awarded out in grants. There would be a grant committee that could be set up, would read those applications. Dr. Daly volunteered not to be on that committee because he said that he might be one of the people that applied for a grant at some point in time for some research. But he did volunteer others that he could throw under the bus if he wants to in public.
I think Dr. Gigoto will do a spectacular job of getting that committee.
So let me let Mike talk about this idea for the council for a minute. The executive committee has referred this to the finance committee for recommendations. So the finance committee will meet, talk about this, then come back to the council with a recommendation, perhaps as soon as next month if we're able to meet, but not shortly thereafter. But I want to thank Mike for coming up with the suggestion, and, I think when Mike shares with you a couple of the things that have accomplished over the last couple of years with relatively small amounts of money, I think you can see why this is an idea worth us considering.
Thanks, Steve, I appreciate it. And thank you for the encouragement as I've been sort of starting to voice this idea. But basically, for those of you who've been around for the last 10 years or so, you'll remember back in about 2003 or 4, we got a I secured a PHTLS grant for $5,000. And a year or so after that, I secured an NAMT grant for about the same. Those two grants led to investigation into pain management practices and led into the study of the protocol change that ultimately supported the standing order morphine program that was subsequently morphed into our controlled substance plan that really is starting to be adopted statewide. That was just two very small grants that provided this seed funding. I don't foresee that this is going to be something that I'm going to have a project for every year. We have a lot of really smart paramedics who will come up with ideas, some which, with some guidance, will be very good for studies. Some may not be. Some will need no guidance whatsoever and will be ready to fly. I foresee this as being something that I would suggest we put out a call for applications a couple of times a year and see what comes in as suggestions from there. Basically, we're already putting Remo on the map. This gives us one more opportunity to do it by allowing our providers the opportunity to do some funded research, which is something that is a huge step forward for an EMS system. So I think it's a great idea. In the last year, I've had probably 2 projects that would have benefited from some seed funding like this. One that's currently stalled and has not moved forward, but is being funded by a private stream, funding stream if it does get started. But that project would have been perfectly suited for a small seed funding system like this. So I think this is something that has another opportunity to make people turn around and say, hey, at Remo, they're looking at what they do, they're doing it better, look at what they're doing with their providers. I think there's an awesome opportunity.
Any thoughts, comments from the floor? All right. Not to be lost, Mike, when you work on this, not only can it be grants for research that leads to things like protocol changes, but provider safety. What kind of work is there to be done in that area? Certainly being emphasized, and patient safety. So thanks, Mike. We'll be working on that over the next month. And there were any other items from the floor tonight? That concludes our listed agenda. Anyone got any new business? All right, great. Yes, Lynn?
I'll make a motion
Yeah.
that we conclude tonight.
Oh, motion to adjourn by Lynn. Second? All right, all in favor? Aye. Good night. Thanks. We'll see you all next month.
Don't care. Oh, no, it's my wife's out of town for 2 days and I can watch sports. Oh, wow. Oh, my kids are there. My daughter's there. She might have her boyfriend set up all the time. Daughter's 20.